So I like my story right now. My problem is I don't have a little lamb, right? I live in the city. They don't let me have a lamb in my yard. But I do have a dog, and I want to allow my dog to be part of the story. And so let's add a little more sort of interaction and a little more customization to this story. I want to have the ability to modify this story so that instead of always saying that the person has a little lamb, that they get to choose from a couple of different options. And so let's come back to Mother Goose, and we're going to come back to the beginning. And so she says, up here, hey, what's your name? And we give an answer. But before she goes on, let's have her ask a different question. Let's have her ask the following. Let's have her ask the question of which pet do you have? And maybe we shouldn't ask that in the ask block. Maybe instead that should be an actual statement. So she should say, which pet do you have? So I'm going to copy and paste that over. Which pet do you have? And I'll put some ... there. And then she's going to say lamb, cat, or dog, right? And wait for an answer. And again, I used the ask block, and so I will always, when I have an ask block, use a variable afterwards. So I'm going to come to the variable tab. I'm going to say make a new variable, and I'm going to call this variable pet, right? And so I'm going to set pet to whatever answer they just gave in that block. And then she continues with the story. And so the idea is that I want to now say, instead of saying Mary had a little lamb, James had a little dog, whatever, we're going to customize it for lamb, cat, or dog. Okay? And so the first thing obviously is this. It's going to say James had a little lamb, Ben had a little dog. And so we want to be able to use that idea of the pet in there. Well, that one's an easy fix. We know that we want to just grab another operator block. We want to grab this join, and we want to say this, right? I want to say James had a little, and I want to, come on, get my cursor in there so I can delete all of this out. I'm going to leave the space after the little so that it will continue. And so I can say, whoever gave me this has a particular pet, right? And so that's the first part. Its fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that James went, okay, now we've got to replace lamb again because they might have a different kind of pet. And so let's see, that's going to be two join blocks together, isn't it? Join. Oops, lost my cursor. Come on. Join. And so the space pet space was sure to go. And so we can add this in. And so now I've got a little bit of an improvement, right? Hi there, let's tell my favorite story. So what's your name? Ben. Which pet do you have? I'm going to have a dog, so I hope you like it. Ben had a little dog. Oops, we got to fix that. See, I keep forgetting to fix over with the lamb. Its fleece was white as snow. And everywhere that Ben went, the dog was sure to go. Okay, that works from a text perspective, but as you can see, we've still got some issues, right? I mean, I said I have a dog, but I'm still seeing the lamb as part of my picture. So if I really want to improve this, what I want to be able to do with my sprite here is not always have a lamb, right? I want to actually change this up so that maybe I can have different sprites, that I can have different costumes for this pet. So it's a lamb if I say lamb, but it could be a dog or a cat. So let's add those costumes. So I'm going to go to costumes, and I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say, let me choose a costume. Right? Takes a little bit here. So let's see. We're going to go to animals, and we're going to add in a cat. Let's add. We'll use Scratchy Cat. Sure. So we'll use Cat A for Scratchy Cat, and then let me add another one for the dog. Let me narrow it down to animals just to make life easier. And so here's all of these, and I kind of like this dog right here. So now I've got a lamb, a cat, and a dog, right? And I could use any of those depending on the particular scenario, but I need to be able to now, when the animal shows up, have the right animal. Okay, so when I'm telling the story and it shows itself, I want it to be the right animal. And so before it shows, I actually have to have some concept of which animal should I be showing. Okay. Well, think about how you do this in your life. Well, if they said lamb, I want to have the lamb costume. If they said cat, I want the cat costume. If they said dog, I want the dog costume. And so the idea here is that there's that idea of if. If one thing is the case, then I want to do something. And that is the control option. We have this idea of if something is true, then do something, right? And so this is a standard computer science kind of thing. It's called a conditional. We say if some condition is true, then do something. And again, it looks a lot like the repeat block, right? It's got this idea of, a mouth that you can put a block or multiple blocks of code into. In this particular case, it's pretty simple. I want to say, look, if they told me that they're a lamb, switch to the lamb costume. If they told me that they're a dog, switch to the dog costume. And so we can do that. And you'll notice that the hole here is very, very different shaped. It's not circular. Notice that most of the circular holes expected either numbers or text. Well, this isn't numbers or text. What goes in here has to be something that we can evaluate as yes or no, or true or false. And if we go to the operators tab, you'll see we have some blocks that have that particular kind of shape. And these are all, if you think about the questions that produce either yes or no, true or false kinds of questions. I'm going to drag out this one because it has the equals sign, and I'm afraid that equals sign doesn't show up particularly well in the video, but you'll notice that greater than, less than, equal to. What I want to know is when they gave me their pet, right, does the pet that they gave me equal the word lamb? And if the pet equals the word lamb, now notice, see, when I move this, that's going to fit in that hole. If the pet equals the word lamb, then I want the lamb costume to be up with this particular sprite. Again, I'm in that sprite that's lamb, cat, dog. And so I can go to looks, and here's the costume information. So if the pet was the lamb, I want the lamb costume. And let me just right-click on this for a second. Come on, I'm going to duplicate it, right? I could also say then, if the pet equals dog, switch to the dog costume. Let me move this out of the way. And I could duplicate this one more time and say, hey, if the pet equals the cat costume, then switch to the cat. And so we could put all of this down here before we show. It says, when I receive story, ask the question, did they say lamb, dog, or cat? And by the way, it's worth noting that pet will have a value by now that has been changed, because Mother Goose starts with her setup where she asks for your name and asks whether you have a lamb, a cat, or a dog, and that setup is all the way complete before tell a story happens. Let me go back again. Go over to the stage. This particular programmer set it up so that we broadcast setup and we wait till it's completely done before tell a story waits. And so by the time tell a story happens, pet does have a value. Hopefully lamb, dog, or cat. And so we can run that, and then we can say when it's all said and done, show this. Let me set this off the side. Show that costume and go. I'm not going to worry about the text right now, but let's just do this, right? She says, hi there. I want to tell you one of my favorite stories. We'll wait for it to come around. What's your name? James. James has perhaps a cat. And so now we get the story. James has a little cat, and there's the cat. Look kind of tiny compared to the lamb. The costumes were different sizes. Still says fleece. And now again it says cat. That's good, but we still have to kind of fix a few things up, right? This isn't too bad. We've got this idea of which pet, and we switch to the costumes. Hopefully it works with the others. Let's try one real quick. Fast forward here. Come on. I want to tell you one of my stories. It's called Mary. So let's do Margaret has a dog. And there we go. Not too bad. That now is the use of these conditionals to allow us to decide which thing is going to happen. I did this one way. I did this with 3 if conditions, but you'll notice that there's also another one. There's an if else, and I want to explain that one before I end this video. What happens in an if else is that it says I want to do one thing if the answer is yes, and another thing if the answer is no. So the idea might be if pet equals lamb, I want to switch costume to lamb. And if it's not equal to lamb, then I want to switch to, I want to do something else. And in this particular case, what I want to do is I want to say, if it's not the lamb, I might actually ask this question again. If the animal is dog, switch to dog. And then the else here is switch to cat. You might say, well, what's the difference between what was on the left and what is on the right? The real distinction right now is, suppose that somebody had put in the word fish, right? On the left-hand side, and I should have left the blocks and duplicated them. On the left-hand side, though, it said, if they told me lamb, switch to lamb. If they told me dog, switch to dog. If they told me cat, switch to cat. If the answer was fish, which of course was none of those, then the costume wouldn't change, which may be the right decision. On the right-hand side, however, you'll notice that it says, if the pet equals lamb, switch to lamb. If the pet equals dog, switch to dog. Else, in other words, I don't care whether they actually told me cat or not. I'm going to always get lamb, dog, or cat. And I'm not sure that's the right example in this example, the right solution in this example. But it's a good way to make sure that at least one thing happens. So I can put this together and now guarantee that I'm going to get a particular animal. And the idea now is if they don't give me lamb or dog, we're just going to get cat always.